This podcast is brought to you by Most Valuable Podcasts, leading the league in podcasting entertainment.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Primetime Podcast. My name is Ricky Widmer, and as always, I'm joined by the one, the only, Brandon Swanson.
Hey.
And what another week, Swanee, of just awesome college football games. Auburn completely destroying the Arkansas Razorbacks. Leonard Fournette, I'm going to let the listeners in on something. Last week, I was like, we should have the topic of should Fournette sit out the entire season, get ready for the NFL draft. Well, he just basically said, you know what, Ricky, I'm going to treat you like this Ole Miss defender that I just put into a grave because I just ran right over these Ole Miss Rebels and had myself a game. We also had Penn State go ahead and upsetting the Ohio State Buckeyes. And also, my second team, they're not my team anymore because they've lost 2 games, but Houston lost again as well.
Yeah, they did, and you had to have been probably a little upset about that.
Well,
I was surprised.
I'm off the bandwagon now.
I was surprised.
I'm off the band. Now I'm officially on the Louisville bandwagon as I sent you guys the Snapchat thing of, doesn't this pose look familiar? Where he, I guess, made a Heisman pose during the demolishing win over NC State.
Well, I think that you were not solely a Houston guy. You were Louisville way back.
Yeah, I was.
So you shouldn't say that you're jumping onto the Louisville bandwagon. You've been on that bandwagon.
I've kind of been half and half
for
a little
quite
bit.
some time.
Teddy Bridgewater got my love going, but now Lamar Jackson has completely stolen my heart, especially with Teddy.
Stolen your heart.
Especially with Teddy and that injury. But Teddy, I'm rooting for you. You're going to come back nice and strong for my Vikes. But we got a jam-packed show today, Brandon.
When don't we?
We always have a jam-packed show. We're going to be talking some Big Ten football. Basically about the Michigan Wolverines. Are they in the driver's seat now in the Big Ten after the Ohio State loss to Penn State? We're going to look at the Clemson-Florida State game, getting ready for that big one in the ACC. And then because we are now 8 weeks done and past in college football, Brandon and I basically say, remember those predictions at the beginning of the season? We never made those. We're making our mid-season college football playoff predictions today on the Primetime Podcast.
Ricky, what would be kind of cool is if we could go back, get those clips, take them, and play them, and then see, and then talk about it. That'd be kind of fun.
I think I'll see what I can do.
See what you can do, because I think that'd be a lot of fun, because I think we would, you and I, and definitely our listeners would have a good time laughing and chewing us to pieces, I think, on those, because I don't think what I'm going to predict now is really
Clemson and Florida State
anywhere.
You had Clemson and Florida State. I know that for sure.
Yeah, talk about being an idiot.
I had Houston. So, you can see how wrong both of us were in that, but we're going to make those predictions to end out the show. But we're going to start in Big Ten country, and we're going to be looking at the Michigan Wolverines, like I mentioned, and really, are they in the driver's seat now after Ohio State's loss to Penn State? And I say in the driver's seat, Brandon, because is Ohio State done, dead in the water? No. They can still beat Michigan in the last game of the season, get the automatic bid into the Big Ten title game for the east side of the Big Ten, then play right now it'd be Nebraska, beat them, and most likely get into the college football playoff. However, Michigan right now, they control their own destiny. They just got to win out, and they're pretty much in the college football playoff as well from the Big Ten.
Yeah, Michigan, I really think that they are in the driver's seat now, especially after that loss to Ohio State. You still have to take a look at the schedule for Michigan, and Ohio State is going to be coming up on the 26th of November, and that is going to be a big game. Like you said, on the road, it's going to be at Ohio State, so that's a huge game to end the season. But I think Michigan, if they can continue to be concentrated, continue to be focused, I think that they're going to be fine until Ohio State's game on November 26th. But here's the thing. Michigan State, they're not ranked. They're not really what they were last season. But this is a rivalry game here. Michigan and Michigan State. I think that those two teams don't really like each other. It's going to be, I think, at least for the fans, a fun game of banter back and forth. But I think that this is one game that you don't want to, and I won't say what you say a lot of the time, Ricky. I'm not gonna go and say that it's a trap game and stuff like that. They need to watch out. But I think that this could be one of those games that if they're not completely focused, and Michigan State is, they could come up and take one from Michigan. And as Ohio State lost to Penn State, I don't think too many people saw that coming. The same thing could happen if Michigan is not completely focused. However, I do think they will be, and I think that they'll get that win.
Well, 3 of the next 4 games for Michigan are exactly what I'm going to use them like you described them. They need to be focused coming into those games. At Michigan State, at Iowa, and then senior night at the Big House or in Ann Arbor at home against the Indiana Hoosiers. Those are 3 opponents that could come out and get you. That Maryland game that I forgot to mention, which I said 3 of the 4, Maryland I don't think is going to pose a huge threat, and that's one where I think Michigan can walk in and kind of like that Rutgers game, the 78-0 game. They can kind of walk in, do their business, get out, get on to the next one. But to me, the big thing and the reason why I'm not so afraid of these next 4 games. I know what you said, like, oh, Michigan State, it's a rivalry game. Anything can happen in these rivalry games. But O'Connor hasn't been a quarterback that Michigan State could lean on this year. Hasn't been the guy that we thought he would be, the guy to lead that and kind of continue the kind of quarterback hierarchy that we've seen at Michigan State. I mean, he's only thrown for 1,257 yards, 11 touchdowns, 6 INTs. Yeah, he's got a rating of 148.2, but he hasn't been that quarterback that has been too special, like extending to the standards that we put at the beginning of the season. And I think this Michigan defense is going to give him hell. I think they're going to give him hell. They're going to give Maryland hell. They're going to give Iowa hell. And then Indiana, that's going to be a real game where the defense for Michigan I am confident in, but that is an Indiana team that could give Michigan a run for their money, even though I have Michigan winning these next 4 games going into that game in Columbus to end the regular season.
I think that the game this past weekend with Ohio State and Penn State was one of those games that shows you that anything can happen in college football, and certainly this season. I think that we saw Rutgers give Minnesota a little bit of a test. We saw Wisconsin tested by Iowa for much of that game. And how about this? In the first half, we saw Purdue beating Nebraska. Now, that was something else because Nebraska has also been a very good, I think quietly, been a good team this year. They've been kind of that podunk team out in the middle of nowhere that no one's talked about for the most part. I think within the Big Ten, yes, they have, but outside of that, the national attention, I don't think it's really been there, which is why
Mike Riley's coming out party.
But this is why I'm saying is that all of those games were close at some point, and I know Michigan for a while in a game a couple of weeks ago against Colorado, it was like, Michigan, where you at? I think they were down 21-3 or something like that.
Look at the Wisconsin game, 14-7.
Exactly. Michigan has had its tests. I think that they possibly could have another one this weekend, one that I think they're able to get out of and probably end up winning handily, but I think that this is why college football is so exciting. This is why people love watching college football. Because any week, anything could happen. Anything could happen. Did anyone think, let's be honest, did anyone think that Auburn was going to blow out Arkansas? You may have thought Auburn was going to win, but you think they were going to blow them out 52-3? No, you did not. No one did. It's just stuff like that. Anything could happen on any given night. Any given player can just step up and make a name for himself. And that's what I love about college sports. College football has been so exciting this season. There's always going to be upsets. There's always going to be good games. But this season, I think, I've seen more upsets, more teams come from behind and get a win, more teams just come out of nowhere. And on that day, they were just better than one of the best teams that we see in college football. that is what's really exciting. But that's what also I think could necessarily work in Michigan's kind of not work in their favor, because Michigan State could just finally come out of nowhere and say, hey, we want to try and be good this week.
Yeah, and the thing that I think is the big part of that Michigan State-Michigan game that's going to be the one thing to focus on, the side of the ball to focus on, is Michigan's offense against Michigan State's defense, because I think the Michigan defense is solid. It is really solid. You look at the points against that they've given up in conference, a phenomenal 25 points. Then if you look over into the overall counting non-conference games, they are the only Big Ten team to not give up 100 points this season. Ohio State, it was them and Ohio State and Wisconsin just put that over the edge and gave up 100 points on the season from this past weekend. But they're sitting at 70 points against overall, 25 points against in in Big Ten play. I think because of that, because of their defense, because of guys like Jabril Peppers, that's the thing that's going to drive this Michigan team forward. And I don't want to sound cliche-y, but I'm going to. There's a reason why they say, Brandon, defense wins championships. And I'm going to go with the team with the better defense as of right now.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think Peppers has been a huge key to this team. And not just defensively, but I think that, just his play really...
Modern-day Boobie Miles.
Well, yeah. I mean, but I think that he's also really helped to spark some other guys on this team and on this defense. And Michigan, under Harbaugh, Michigan has really prided themselves on their passion and their defense. And I think that is something that's really big. And I think that's going to be something that's really big going forward. And I said at the beginning of this season, and when we were in the offseason coming into the year, is that last year, people really looked at Michigan and they were all excited. They jumped on the Michigan train and Harbaugh, and Michigan's gonna go to the playoffs this year and they're gonna win it, and whoa, it's gonna be awesome. Ricky, what did I say? I said they were a year too early. Mm-hmm. They needed to wait a year. Now it's time to jump on the train for Michigan. And this train is choo-chooing right along. They are definitely full head of steam. I think that they are going to continue to have a great season. They really don't have a whole lot of tests. The rest of the way, I think on the road at Michigan State, I think that's going to be an interesting game. Maryland, they should handle easily at home. On the road at Iowa, that should be fine. Indiana, it could be interesting for a quarter, but I think they handle that. And then on the road at Ohio State, if this team is able to go out and win the rest of these games, they are the Big Ten champion. They are the Big Ten champion. I don't care what people are saying with Nebraska. Nebraska will be good. Nebraska will give them a contest. But I think that at the end of the day, Michigan is too good defensively and overwhelming defensively. I don't want to say it's no contest, but it's no contest.
Let me ask you this then to kind of end it out, and this might be a reiteration, and if it is, I apologize for kind of reiterating a point, but I think it's an important one. No matter which team wins the Big Ten East, because let's be honest, it's either going to be Ohio State or it's going to be Michigan. I don't see Penn State slipping, getting up there. I don't see Michigan losing 2 games so that Penn State could win a tiebreaker over Michigan. But no matter who comes out of the East, whether it's Ohio State, whether it's Michigan, is either one of those teams, yes, you said Nebraska might give them a fight, but is it pretty much whoever wins the East is going to win the Big Ten title game and go on to the college football playoff? I
think so. And again, I don't want to say that Nebraska is not good. I don't want to say that there's no chance for them. But I think that when you look at it, I think that really it does come down to these teams in their defenses. And I think that when you put up most teams, match up most teams against a team like Michigan, most teams are going to kind of fall when you look at Michigan's defense compared to even any other team's defense, except for possibly Alabama's, and most likely Alabama's. They have the best team in all of college football. But I think that when it comes to Michigan and when it comes to, I think, taking a look at their team, they've got so many different guys who can run the football and score on the ground. Wilton Speight has been really good. He's over, just about 1,500 yards, 13 touchdowns, only 2 interceptions. This team all around is solid. And I think that that's why they are as good as they are, because there's not one spot where you're like, oh, there's a gaping hole at the running back position. Oh, there's a gaping hole at the quarterback position. I think that this team is just so fundamentally sound, and the reason being, Coach Harbaugh. You don't have a team that he's coaching and have it be not fundamentally sound. It really comes down to coaching, comes down to getting the right players and the right systems. They've got the right players.
Well, and my big thing, kind of to put the final thoughts on it from my end, is the reason why I am favoring Michigan coming into these final 5 games is defense. And some of the big defensive stats is tackles for loss, just getting into the backfield. Some of the big guys, you got Ben Gideon, you've got Jabril Peppers, who we talked about. They lead the team. Jabril's got 10, Gideon's got 9 tackles for loss. Both of them, I believe, have 46 total yards in that department. But then you got guys like defensive linemen who got to thank him again for coming on the show and talking a little Michigan football during the offseason, but defensive lineman Mo Hurst, who stepping up in a new defensive system because their defensive coordinator came over from Boston College this offseason. He's even got himself 6.5 tackles for loss. And there are a couple guys where you see like 5.5, 4.5. So it's a pretty spread out attack and just getting into the backfield. And I think that's going to propel Michigan, I'll say, to the Big Ten title game. I think they're going to play Nebraska. And in that, I like Michigan. But like you've said, Brandon, Nebraska could probably give them a run for their money. And plus, anything can happen in a title game in any conference. But this is where you guys come in. Let us know down below what you guys think. Is Michigan in the driver's seat? What are they going to do in the driver's seat? And how do you think the rest of the Big Ten plays out with the last 5 or so games that we have left for each team?